Thank you for joining the Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer Training webinar for our 2018 Capitol Hill Advocacy Day. I am Jill Friedman, Events Coordinator for DDF, and I will be moderating today's webinar. In a moment, I will introduce DDF's Executive Director, Andrea Eidelman, to welcome you. Then we will be joined by Camille Bonza, our Advocacy Consultant, who will conduct the advocacy training. You will be able to ask questions throughout this presentation. You can type your question into the white text box that appears on your screen. At the conclusion of the presentation, Camille Bonza will address questions as time allows. If we are unable to answer all questions during the time allotted, we will respond in an email to all advocates. In addition, the recording of this webinar will be accessible to all advocates on the Advocate Resource Center on our website. I would now like to introduce to you the Executive Director of Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer, Andrea Eidelman.
Hello, my name is Andrea Eidelman, and I am the Executive Director for DDF. Welcome to the Advocacy Day Training webinar. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you in Washington, D.C. at the end of the month. Debbie's Dream Foundation is dedicated to raising awareness about stomach cancer, advancing funding for research, and providing education and support internationally to patients, families, and caregivers. Our ultimate goal is to make the cure for stomach cancer a reality. You can learn more about Debbie's Dream by visiting our website at www.debbiesdream.org. In a few short years, DDF has achieved many great milestones. We have 25 chapters across the U.S., as well as chapters in Canada and Germany, and events are ongoing around the country. Our patient resource education program helps patients, their families, and caregivers around the world by matching them with survivors and caregivers using disease-specific criteria, including stage, biomarker, and location. We host educational webinars and symposia year-round, and our website contains in-depth information about stomach cancer that can be translated into more than 60 languages. We also have provided $650,000 in research grants and will award an additional $100,000 to researchers in 2018. We advocated during our Stomach Cancer Capitol Hill Advocacy Day to add stomach cancer to the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program. Each year, we return to Washington, D.C. to maintain funding for researchers. These efforts have resulted in nearly $18 million being awarded to stomach cancer researchers over 3 fiscal years.
Over the years, hundreds of DDF stomach cancer advocates have traveled to Capitol Hill to ask Congress to invest more federal resources in stomach cancer research. Specifically, Congress was asked to include stomach cancer among those cancers eligible for research funding under the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program, and we won. The result for fiscal year 2015 is that nearly $5.8 million was awarded to stomach cancer researchers, which would not have happened without DDF advocates on Capitol Hill meeting with their members of Congress. There is still so much to be done, so we cannot become complacent, which is why your participation in our 2018 Advocacy Day is so important. Your participation can help change the course of stomach cancer research in this country. I'm briefly going to go over the Advocacy Day itinerary. Advocates will arrive to Washington, D.C. on Monday morning. We'll be hosting a welcome lunch from 12 to 12:30 p.m. After everyone arrives and we get through the introductions, everyone will spend the afternoon in educational breakout sessions, including a prep and chapter update / Q&A led by Mary Margaret Kilmeyer, DDF's Director of Programs, and an events how-to session led by myself and DDF's Events Manager, Candy Osmond. We will have a break in between sessions. After the breakout sessions, Camille and her team will conduct an advocacy training session where you will receive tips and trainings to prepare for our meetings on the Hill. At the end of the day, advocates will have a break to get ready for dinner. Dinner will start at 6:30, where we will take a group photo and also present an award to our Volunteer of the Year. Tuesday is the day we will visit the Hill. After breakfast, We will depart the hotel as a group to take photos at the Capitol building. Then groups will attend their scheduled meetings between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. The meetings will be followed by a celebratory dinner. Advocates will have a break from 5 to 7 p.m. to have time to relax and get ready before dinner. We will have a photographer and videographer at all times during the event. Therefore, upon arriving at Hotel George on Monday, February 26th, all participants will need to sign a media release form. If you haven't done so already, now is the time to make your hotel reservations. It is a very busy time in DC and rooms are booking fast. We still have a few rooms left in our block at Hotel George, so please contact them now to get yours. Hotel George is the most convenient option as we will have all meals and meetings there. Also, DDF will send out an email with the food options for dinner each night. We will need all advocates to send us their food selections by Friday, February 16th. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Camille Bonza from Summit Consulting, who will provide us with more information about advocacy and the event.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being part of Debbie's Dream Foundation's advocacy efforts and for taking time away from your families and work to travel to Washington, D.C. later this month. Go ahead to the next slide. You're the voice of stomach cancer, and when you go to Capitol Hill on February 27th, you will be increasing awareness of stomach cancer through your own experiences. And you'll be educating members of Congress and their staff about the lack of foundational knowledge about stomach cancer. And importantly, you'll be asking for more research funding that can lead to better treatments and maybe someday a cure. Next slide. Hill meetings are being scheduled for you based on your registration information. Your meeting schedules will be provided to you when you arrive in Washington, D.C. Background materials will also be provided to you upon arrival. These materials will assist you in preparing for and conducting your Hill meetings. An Advocate Resource Center has been created on the Debbie's Dream Foundation website for you to access all the Hill meeting materials in advance of your travels to Washington, D.C. From the DDF homepage, find the Capitol Hill Day from the Events tab and click on the Advocate Resource Center. These materials are in the process of being updated, so continue to check back for updated materials. And once you're in DC, you're also going to receive folders with fact sheets and other materials to provide your congressional offices. Be assured that we'll be making plenty of extra folders for Capitol Hill in case you'd like to stop by other congressional offices from your state in between your scheduled visits. Next slide. So you may be wondering what to wear on your Hill visits. Men are asked to wear a jacket, long sleeve button-down shirt and tie. And for women, a suit, pants or a skirt, or even a dress is fine. We ask that you not wear jeans and try to avoid anything such as a big belt buckle or large pieces of metal jewelry that might hinder getting through security, just as if you were going through airport screening. If you're a veteran or active military, please consider wearing your uniform, given our efforts to raise awareness about the link between stomach cancer and military service. Most importantly, wear comfortable shoes because you will be doing a lot of walking on Tuesday. You'll also receive a lapel pin to wear and to distribute to members of Congress and their staff. And lastly, all DDF participants are encouraged to wear periwinkle or any shade of blue and to avoid bright colors for your group photo on Capitol Hill Tuesday morning. Next slide. So now we're going to move to the Hill meeting. Meeting with a member of Congress or their staff doesn't need to be a stressful ordeal as long as you are well prepared and that you know what you're going to say and you're prepared to keep the discussion on message. Monday's program, once you're in DC, is going to include an advocacy training that's going to be led by my colleague, Megan Gordon-Dunn. Megan most recently worked as the Vice President for Government Affairs and Advocacy for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, and she now serves as the Executive Director of the Deadliest Cancers Coalition. And Megan brings with her a wealth of grassroots advocacy experience, and I think you're going to enjoy the training session that we have planned for you. It's very important to always stay on message in your meetings. And while members of Congress and their staff are genuinely concerned about their constituents' views, keep in mind that they also don't like to commit any requests on the spot. So it's going to be up to you to stay on message and to press your requests politely yet firmly. Now, when you sit down for a meeting with a member of Congress or a congressional staffer, start by introducing yourself. Make sure you say where you live and that you're visiting on behalf of Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer. And if it's a repeat visit with a lawmaker or a congressional staffer, remind them that you have met before. After introductions, you're going to tell your story. You're going to talk about what led you to becoming an advocate for stomach cancer research and what brought you to Washington, D.C. Next slide. Now, before you state what action you want the member of Congress to take, it's really important to take an opportunity to say thank you if it's appropriate. And included among the background materials that will be provided to you will be a list of lawmakers who have been helpful to Debbie's Dream Foundation in the past. So it'll be really important to take a look at that list and make sure that you provide thank you or appreciation where it's due. Now, when you're making your request to your member of Congress, you can use facts and figures to make your point, but don't overwhelm your lawmaker or the staffer with too much data. You're going to have folders with fact sheets to provide to the congressional offices, and those fact sheets are going to be full of numbers and details. When you are face-to-face with the lawmaker or the staffer, it's important to use your experience and your story as the tool of persuasion. Next slide. Make sure before you end your meeting that you close a deal. Ask a member of Congress or staff if he or she will support your request. And again, if they can't give you an on-the-spot answer, let them know that you will be following up. And lastly, remember to say thank you and make sure they have your contact information and offer to be a resource to them. Next slide. For this year's Advocacy Day, we're going to focus on a single request. We are going to ask members of Congress to support maintaining the inclusion of stomach cancer in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program. And you're going to do this by asking the member of Congress to sign a letter to the Appropriations Committee with this request. And this letter, again, this year is going to be led by Congresswoman Frankel and Congresswoman Ross-Layton in the House, and in the Senate by Senator Hirono. And those letters will be posted as soon as they're finalized. Now, sometimes members of Congress, particularly those who sit on the Appropriations Committee, will say that they don't sign onto these types of letters. And when this happens, you can respond by politely asking the lawmaker to directly submit to the Appropriations Committee a request that stomach cancer be kept in the peer-reviewed cancer research program. Now, every lawmaker has an opportunity to make these individual appropriations-related requests to the committee. In fact, these individual requests actually carry a lot of weight, even more so than signing on to these letters, especially when that lawmaker is a member of the Appropriations Committee. So the first thing we're going to ask is for lawmakers to sign the letter. If they can't, we're going to ask them, or maybe in addition to make an individual request to the Appropriations Committee. Next slide. Now, you may find that you need to give lawmakers and staff a brief overview of the peer-reviewed cancer research program. The program is run through the Department of Defense, and it's under the umbrella of the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program. The peer-reviewed cancer research program was first funded by Congress in 2009, and it supports research into specific cancers as designated by Congress with relevance to military service members. The program tends to support high-risk, high-reward research and complements NIH research. I want to add that medical research funded through the Department of Defense has come under attack by a subset of lawmakers in recent years, including by Senator John McCain, who chairs the Armed Services Committee. And his argument, and that of others, is that medical research doesn't belong under the Department of Defense. And it is precisely against this backdrop that we need to continue to draw the strong link between military service overseas and the risk of H. pylori, which in turn increases the risk of stomach cancer. Funding through the peer-reviewed cancer research program has become a vital funding stream for stomach cancer research, and it does have the potential to make a real difference, and we need to fight for its continued funding. Next slide. Over the past few years, there has been a significant increase in the amount of funding appropriated by Congress to the peer-reviewed cancer research program. And in fact, the program's budget has grown to $60 million. Thanks to our collective efforts, stomach cancer was first included as eligible for research funding in fiscal year 2015, and it has remained eligible since then. At this time, action on the fiscal year 2018 spending bills has not been completed, and while I was hopeful that Congress would have completed its work before our Capitol Hill Advocacy Day, Congress is on track to pass another continuing resolution that will run through the end of March, which means that fiscal year 2018 spending will not be settled when we are in DC in February. But our focus is going to be on fiscal year 2019, even though we will not know what the final funding levels are for fiscal year 2018. So we will give you another update when you get to Washington, DC, and we will modify our messaging on Capitol Hill as needed. What I want to draw to your attention is the tremendous success that we've had to date with securing more research funding for stomach cancer thanks to your advocacy. And in just 2 years, fiscal years 2015 and 2016, the peer-reviewed cancer research program has invested more than $13 million in stomach cancer, supporting 19 research projects. Next slide. Now, we've been able to make a persuasive case for why stomach cancer should be included in the peer-reviewed cancer research program. Stomach cancer is a malignancy that has been recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs as presumed to be service-connected based on hazardous exposure to ionizing radiation. But more significantly, research studies have shown that U.S. soldiers living under field conditions may be at greater risk of H. pylori infections. And again, this is significant because H. pylori is a primary identified cause of stomach cancer. Next slide. Now, while you can read through the fact sheets and the other information that will be provided on the Advocate Resource Center, I just want to take a few moments to cover a few key statistics. According to the American Cancer Society's Facts and Figures book for 2018, it is estimated that more than 26,000 Americans will be diagnosed with stomach cancer and nearly 11,000 will die from the disease. About 80% of patients are asymptomatic during the early stages of stomach cancer, and as we all know, this often leads to a late diagnosis. At a distant or stage 4 diagnosis, the 5-year survival rate is 5%, and overall, the 5-year survival rate is 31%. Now, it's important beyond these statistics to emphasize that the incidence rates of stomach cancer, particularly in whites aged 25 to 39, increased by 66% between 1977 and 2006. And this data is significant because the expected frequency of stomach cancer overall has declined over the past 80 years in the United States. For those of you who have attended Capitol Hill meetings in the past, I am sure that you can attest to the fact that most Capitol Hill staffers and members of Congress know very little about this deadly disease. In fact, many think it is a disease that only occurs in older populations. So again, as we talked about in that first slide, part of your role when you go to Capitol Hill on Tuesday will be to educate members of Congress and their staff about stomach cancer. Next slide. Now, when you share the need for increased stomach cancer research funding through the National Cancer Institute, We're going to explain that per cancer death, stomach cancer receives the least amount of federal research funds of any cancer. And without a targeted research investment in stomach cancer, researchers have a really difficult time competing against more well-established cancers for a limited pot of money. And consequently, cancer research don't want to enter the field of stomach cancer. But again, our focus is going to be on the Department of Defense and the peer-reviewed cancer research program, but it's important to tie what we're asking for with the Department of Defense back to the National Cancer Institute and the need for a more comprehensive approach to increasing the stomach cancer research funding and the types of research that is funded. Next slide. So here's your homework between now and when you travel to Washington, D.C. Take some time to draft a script, which could also be your advocate story for the packets that we'll be giving out to the congressional members and staff. So have a good idea about the key points based on your experience that you would like to get across to the folks that you're meeting with. Review the Advocacy Day materials and talking points. Take some time to read about your member of Congress, both your senators and your representative. You can go to www.house.gov or www.senate.gov and navigate to the page of your members of Congress to learn more. Make sure you bring your Debbie's Dream Foundation business cards if you have some. If not, we'll have some general DDF business cards to give to you, or you can bring a personal business card, just something that you can hand to the person that you meet with so they have a way of contacting you when you leave. Again, I want to emphasize, pack comfortable shoes. We're about comfort, not fashion up on the hills. We're going to do a lot of walking on Tuesday. And most importantly, I hope that you all get excited about joining fellow advocates in Washington to make a difference in medical research funding. Lastly, we're going to encourage everyone to get on social media and to tweet and post, and suggested posts will be emailed to you and will be available on the Advocate Resource Center. And of course, we want you to include photos of you as you spend your time up on DC, up on the Hill in DC, as well as your journey to Washington for the Advocacy Day. And now I will turn it back over to DDF staff for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Camille, for that informative presentation. I will now begin reading questions from the participants that were submitted during the presentation. First question, how do I follow up after my meeting?
So you will get a card from, most likely, or you should ask for a card from the staffer that you meet with on the Hill. And when you get back home, you should send a follow-up email to the person that you met with, thanking them for their time and reiterating your request. And that is going to be to sign on to the congressional letters going to appropriators, or to make an individual request to the Appropriations Committee. And what we will do is we will keep you apprised following your visit in Washington, D.C. of those lawmakers who have committed to signing the letter. And so we will send updates, and we will encourage you to follow up as needed with your members of Congress. Next question.
What if I run out of materials to hand out?
We are going to make extra folders. We are hoping that won't be the case. Everyone will have a folder for each of the meetings that you'll be going on. We will make sure that there are enough folders, and we will do it by state delegation. So if there are 3 people coming from Ohio and they're meeting with 6 congressional offices, we'll make sure that they have 6 folders for each of those offices, plus additional folders in case they, they need 2 for a meeting, or if they want to stop by another office and hand a folder. We'll also have some extra folders. Staff will have them in the event that you need more folders while you're on the Hill. We will make arrangements to meet you and hand them off. Next question.
How long are meetings scheduled for?
So we're going to give you, first of all, what we hope is plenty of time to get from meeting to meeting. I would plan on meetings lasting no more than 10 or 15 minutes. Now, sometimes meetings will last longer, sometimes meetings will last shorter. You should always have that elevator speech prepared so you can make the quick pitch when you need to, particularly if the member of Congress is just stopping by in your meeting to say hello. You just want to get that key request, that key message across to that member of Congress. But you should think about being able to deliver your message and cover all the points that you want to cover within 10 to 15 minutes. Next question.
Can we advocate for another state?
So what we will do is we will schedule meetings based upon your registration information, and we will also be doing some additional meetings with some targeted folks up on the Hill. Generally the rule of thumb is that the easiest way to get a meeting on the Hill is for there to be a constituent from that state or that district who is going to be participating in that meeting. I know that some of you have friends or family who are going to be participating, and they're from a different state. And so what we will do in those instances is we will try in as much as possible to have you all go on each other's meetings. So, that's not always possible, but we will, we will try to accommodate those situations where they arise. Again, we will work to make sure that everyone has a full schedule for their day on the Hill. Next question.
If I'm a new advocate, am I going to be paired up with someone else?
So whether or not you are paired up will depend in part whether or not there is somebody else from your state that is participating in the Advocacy Day, or if you have friends or family from another state that we're trying to pair you up with. If it's the first time that you are participating in Advocacy Day, we will do our best to make sure that you are not alone, at least on your first visit. And if we can't pair you up with another advocate, then staff and myself will divide and conquer and make sure that you have someone to accompany you, and most importantly, we'll just make sure everyone feels comfortable before heading to the Hill, and that everyone knows exactly where they're going. Next question.
When do I need to turn in my bio/story?
We are requesting those as soon as possible. Ideally, we would like them all here, I would say, by February 9th.
Who are our Congressional Champions this year?
Our Congressional Champions this year are Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat from Ohio, and Senator Roy Blunt, who is a Republican from Missouri. Next question.
What are the stats for Latinos and Asians?
Those statistics for minority populations, some of which are more adversely affected in terms of prevalence and death rates from stomach cancer, we will make sure that those statistics are provided to you in the background materials. Next question.
What is being done to target the Black Caucus?
So we will be not only looking at some targeted meetings for the Congressional Black Caucus, but also the Hispanic and Asian Pacific Islander caucuses as well. They certainly can play a role in helping to disseminate our letter to other members of their caucus. So we will be looking closely at that. Next question.
We're actually finished with all of our questions. If you think you have any additional questions after we conclude, or if you're listening to the recorded version, please submit your question by email to events@debbiesdream.org. Candy and I will be your points of contact for Advocacy Day. I would like to thank our participants for joining us today and committing to travel to Washington for this important event. Thank you to our speaker, Camille Bonza, and to Debbie's Dream Foundation Curing Stomach Cancer's Executive Director, Andrea Eidelman. We are looking forward to seeing you all in Washington, D.C. Thank you.